Hello everyone, welcome to Chapter 7, Propriety and Friendship. So the major objectives for this chapter is to understand the rights and the service of divine beings or spiritual beings. The second, the rights and the social order. And finally, the rights and personal nourishment. So Li, pronounced in falling and rising tone, has two common translations. One is the propriety or behavioral propriety. It means the quality of socially and morally acceptable. And another one is the rite or the ritual. It is a ceremony that always performed in the same way in order to mark an important religious or social occasion. So you can see that the term can refer to the normative codes of conduct in ancient or modern Chinese society, and also it can refer to the concrete manifestation of these codes in our daily life. In pre-Confucian text, the ritual or the rites were the religious behavior to seek for the supernatural protection and blessing. Many of the rituals, such as the harvest and Thanksgiving ones, were only conducted by the emperor himself, also refers to the Son of Heaven. However, later in the spring and autumn and in the warring state period, the scope of such concept expanded. So from the service of the divine beings or spiritual beings to a means of securing the social order and preserving the political hierarchies, and then to the appropriate behavior of the people or the care for people in connections. The rites are more than the outward form they bear. So it is worth noticing here that it is Confucius who transformed and generalized the meaning of Li from the rite and the ritual to the necessary educative and self-reflective socialization process. So in this way, the rite fills the spiritual, the governing, and educative functions. Now, let's first examine some typical sayings by the Confucius regarding the religious ritual. In the era of a spring and autumn period, the rites were ruined and the music collapsed. The rulers did not go to the temple or the court, including the king of state Lu. He did not go to the temple, and he used a sheep as a sacrificial offerings, as a symbolic one. So in that case, Zigong was saying that it's meaningless to keep such a formality. He wanted to do away with the sacrificial sheep at the announcement of a new moon. And Master said, okay, Ci, you are loath to part with the price of the sheep, but I'm loath to see the disappearance of the right. You see, in the Confucius view, what important position that right holds. So when we're talking about the divine beings, the Confucius was saying that
Confucius said, "How abundant is the display of power of spiritual beings. We look for them, but do not see them. We listen to them, but do not hear them. They form the substance of all things, and nothing can be without them. They cause all people in the world to fast and purify themselves and put on the richest dresses to perform sacrifices to them. Like the spread of overflowing water, they seem to be above and to be on the left and right."
So even though invisible, there is a divine power up there. They're watching over us. So we need to have something in our mind like of sincerity. We need to show the reverence to this all-inspiring beings. The Confucius continues saying that
the book of poetry says, the coming of spiritual beings cannot be surmised. How much less can we get tired of them? Such is a manifestation of the subtle. Such is the impossibility of hiding the real sincerity.
only with the sincerity in our heart and mind can we show our kind of true reverence to the divine beings. So in early China, people believe that, throughout the life, the human beings are troubled with some of the contradictory elements, like the conflicting emotions, contrasting energies, and chaotic spirits. So in order to combat these negative or uncontrolled energy, people made this ritual acts. They hope to get rid of such a confusion. So ancestral worship constitutes an important part of such ritual acts. So the purpose of it is to transform the dangerous ghosts into benevolent ancestors. So it is a process of humanizing the evil spirits. On that particular day, the meat of a beast, on most occasions, they are the pigs, would be placed in a bronze ritual vessel and cooked in an open fire in front of the family at a temple. So the family would call down the ghost to feed on the rich smoke that rose up from the meat. So by feeding the ghost these frequent meals, the living hoped to humanize them. And they wanted to get them back into family and persuade them to inhabit the role of a benevolent ancestor hovering above. So the ancestral worship can be seen as a process for a living to transform the evil spirits. And they want to keep those benevolent spiritual beings instead of the evil ones. So in the doctrine of the Ming, it is clearly described of the ancestral worship. It is an expression of the height of the filial piety.
Confucius said, King Wu and Duke Zhou were indeed eminently filial. Men of filial piety are those who skillfully carry out the wishes of their forefathers and skillfully carry forward their undertakings. In spring and autumn, they repaired the ancestral temple, displayed their ancestral vessels and exhibited the ancestral robes, and presented the appropriate offerings of the season. The ritual of the ancestral temple is in order to place their kindred on the left or on the right, according to the order of descent. This order in rank meant to distinguish the more honorable or humbler stations. Services in the temple are arranged in order so as to give distinction to the worthy according to their ability for those services. In the pledging rite, the inferiors present their cups to their superiors so that people of humble stations may have something to do. In the concluding feast, honored places were given people with white hair so as to follow the order of seniority. To occupy places of their forefathers, to practice their rites, or to perform their music, to revere those whom they honored, to love those who were dear to them, to serve the dead as they were served while alive, and to serve the departed as they were served while still with us. This is the height of filial piety.
So it reminds us of the special day, the tomb sweeping day in modern times. When we think about this special occasion, it is true. I mean, it's more easy for us to understand why in Confucian philosophy the ritual was so essential, so important, because it is something for the performer, the living beings. It can change the feeling of the living, because on these special occasions, and people get together and they pay the homage to the same ancestors, and it creates a kind of a harmonious atmosphere. So it seems like that the disputes and disagreement among the siblings, among the family members, just disappear. And it changed the feeling and emotions of the living beings when they think about their ancestor. So that's why the process of the ancestral worship is a good way to let the living beings think more about the significance of their living, and kind of connections with the dead, connections with the deceased, make them to cherish more about their present life. It is also a good way to trace down the family spirit. Then next issue, how about the rite and the social order? What is the logic here? What is the origin of the ritual? Because I often hear a lot about whether we need order, whether we need this ritual. So what are some things hidden behind? So in order to get the best answer, we need to read one of the articles by the Xunzi, and it's talking about the origin of the ritual. He was saying that,
what is the origin of ritual? I would say that man were born with desires. If he fails to fulfill it, he will seek to satisfy himself in other ways. If there are no criteria for or no limits to his seeking, then he will inevitably quarrel with other men. Quarrels breed disorder, and disorder breeds poverty. The ancient kings hated such disorder, and therefore they established the rites in order to curb it, to control men's desires and to provide for their satisfactions. They sorted that desires did not overextend the means for their satisfaction, and material goods did not fall short of what was desired. Thus, both desires and goods were looked after and satisfied. This is the origin of the rites.
so you see, the origin of the rites, simply because of the unlimited desire. Man, by nature, is full of desire. If such desire cannot be constrained, let go of this desire, there must cause lot of contentions, disputes. And so the function of the king or the ruler is to take good care of this and to make sure that both desires and goods were looked after and satisfied. So you see, the ritual, the desire, and the social order, there is a logic here. So Confucius appreciates that the rites was a powerful device for securing harmonious social order. So he consistently stressed that the important role of the rites in government. He suggested that the rites were useless unless they were employed in governing the state. And the way recommended by the Confucian to cultivate the personal life of the ruler is to fast, to purify, and to be correct in dresses at the time of solemn sacrifice, and not to make any movement contrary to the rites. So in the view of the Confucian, the rites became significant when the ruler tried to purify his body and mind, and to demonstrate a symbolic force to the public, to ritualize the politics so as to empower the moral part of it, and finally to enable the ruler to execute his power without direct engagement.
The master said, if a man is able to govern the state by observing the rites and showing deference, what difficulties will be there? If the man is not able to govern the state by observing the rites and showing deference, what point is there in rites?
So you see, it's so important to govern the state with the right.